Bretonnia is undoubtedly very awesome, but in Domination they do struggle for one major reason. Their primary infantry corps has terrible capture weight because they count as expendable. That includes all men-at-arms types units, even like the polearms, which are reasonably expensive at 450 points. In comparison, the 450, I think maybe only 400 cost zombie halberds are not expendable, neither are deckhands. So in this specific matchup, Valkynos Vampire Coast has a significant capture weight advantage. Let's see if Sultan, aka Glorious Feeder, can overcome. He's got, Lewin in his starting army, peasant mobs and men-at-arms here with shields, spears and swords mixed, some archers as well with some peasant bowmen. Splitting up and around, we've got Lore of Heavens, Damsel for DPS, just damage spell output, and of course a Grail Relic. On the other side, we've got Count Noctilus and two Gunnery Whites. Some units coming out of reserves here. We've got some deck gunners already coming out. The handguns, deckhand mobs up front with dual hand weapons. One polearm behind, couple of mortars as well. Let's take a look at said reserves. For Bretonnia, they've got a single Grail Guardian, Royal Pegasus Knight, two Knights of the Realm, Beast Slayers of Bastion, two Battle Pilgrims, two Peasant Fire Arrows, two Mounted Yeomen, and another mob. For Valkynos Vampire Coast, he's got the Regiment of Renown, Rotting Prometheans, the Lamprey's Revenge, two Depth Guard, two Deck Guns, three Handguns, one Dog, one Bloated Corpse, and three Deckhands. Now we are back. So it's certainly a very tricky one, especially on this kind of choke point type map, although some direct line of fire units will have a hard time, like these handguns will have a hard time shooting over the heads of their undead brethren. The borders are definitely a good call, and in general, Bretonnia sort of being forced into the hot gates will expose them to a lot of potential for missile fire, besides the capture weight advantage here. Also, Sultan's brought the Grail Relic, which is the worst unit in the game, considering its cost. While it is nice to get immune to psychology and a plus 12 leadership in an AoE, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not worth its cost, especially when you consider it to the new, significantly buffed Corpse Cart. Yeah, it's just not even close. So hopefully the Grail Relic will get some kind of a buff in the future, but for the time being, it's going to have to do. Lewin swinging on into the back. He does have Lion Shield to potentially help protect against some of this missile fire, but we see some handguns out very early. No bombers from Vampire Coast, but instead a triple prong pressure from Bretonnia as they move up to secure all three objectives. They're going to secure this one, obviously, but this other objective in the back, even just a couple of zombies and Noctilus is enough to outweigh the Bretonnian units attempting to seize that objective. Lewin also feeling the pain of some armor-piercing missiles, some Royal Pegasus Knights coming in. This is a significant amount of value. They're right now not taking any missile fire, which is very, very nice. They're going to drop a charge down onto these deck guns, and one charge should be enough to just kill the unit of deck guns outright. You can see most of the models just evaporate on the charge. More than half their HP is immediately gone. They're forced into crumbling, maybe even disintegration, but very quickly the handguns turn to fire on the Royal Pegasus Knights. It's going to be very cost inefficient. Meanwhile, in the front line, zombies are winning with Noctilus support. Grail Relic is going to move in and try and fight Noctilus, I think, which is an MLG distraction tactic for sure. Meanwhile, over here, again, the one zombie deckhand polearm just holding off like a horde of men-at-arms and peasant archers. And, you know, while I kind of agree with cheaper, especially like very cheap 100 cost units having expendable capture weight, I'm starting to think that perhaps men-at-arms should not have expendable capture weight, even though they should maybe still maintain the expendable trait. It's something for them to look at for greenskins potentially, and ogres as well. I mean, ogres have some other issues besides, but you know, Bretonnia being in a similar boat that they rely primarily on mobile large units and don't have a lot of great infantry for capture. Bretonnia at the very least does have some battle pilgrims, which I'm sure we'll see some coming out here in a minute, but Lewin and his air force took a significant amount of damage. I don't know if the damage they inflicted on the Vampire Coast was ultimately worth damage taken, but we're going to see another Pit of Shades here just used on a regular peasant bowman. That's Not great damage value-wise in terms of that spell. It certainly could do better, but at the same time, tactically, you just want to deal with them. Knights of the Realm scything through with the Knights of Regio color scheme. Very cool. Lewin also swoops down from the sky and drops some pretty big damage there on the Gunnery Whites. Going to upgrade Harmonic Convergence to give extra armor. I'm not really sure about that, but certainly it will be quite nice to get Sword of Crone to debuff the melee defense and armor of those Gunnery Whites. Meanwhile, Knights of the Realm charging up in the front line. We've got more returning infantry as well. So Bretonnia pushing. Army damage value-wise, they are trading pretty badly right now. A lot of that is due to the damage on the Royal Pegasus Knights, I'm sure, but the Peasant Archers do get set up in a nice firing position, start shooting down onto the zombies below, and Bretonnia, while they haven't secured this objective, they've been able to at least prevent the Vampire Coast from securing it, which can be enough often, but right now some depth guard lurking, looking like they want to come back and potentially seize this objective. The mortar fire I've also seen has been landing all over. Mortars are probably bugged to have infinite ammunition right now, assuming that he brought, yes, the Lore of Vampires lore attributes. So that will make the mortars that much extra strong. I mean, they have enough ammunition that they would probably have been firing this whole time anyway, so it's really not too much of an issue right now, but Sultan definitely needs to try and shut them down as quickly as possible. Right after he shuts down the Gunnery White crabs, one of them is just about dead. We've also got some more men-at-arms moving through. Noctilus in the back line, a little bit overexposed. Perhaps Lewin wants to go try and fight Noctilus as well, but right now just eats that Gunnery White for breakfast and moves off. Big blob of vampire stuff right now. There's some Winds of Magic available, I'm sure. Yeah, looks like 15 Winds of Magic, maybe a little Wind Blast or Thunderbolt right through that beautiful juicy blob right now would be perfect, but let's see. I don't get to see the cooldowns, unfortunately, so I can't see what's off of cooldown. Pit of Shades, though, definitely off of cooldown. Is going to be activated here to deal with these Grail Guardians and the Knights of the Realm. Very cost-effective use of that spell there. Will just do very significant damage to those cavalry. The Grail Guardians, though, should be able to hold for some time, as long as they don't take too much more magic or missile damage. They have the very high defensive stats and can defend this objective. Lewin, meanwhile, swoops over to try and take out those Depth Guard, deal some damage to them, allow some peasant mobs to run in there and help defend, but it's looking like a triple cap for the Vampire Coast. Bretonnia still has not been able to seize that objective. Just the zombie deckhand halberds are too much capture weight for even multiple more expensive men-at-arms units. Very painful stuff there, and Grail Guardians also not standing on the objective. Maybe could be enough with the Grail Guardians and the Damsel and everything all together to actually take the objective from Noctilus, but right now it moved over trying to take out that Gunnery White. Pretty smart, but that does force them into a little bit of a blob where Noctilus can then fire his cannon in to do devastating damage, drop his bombardment from the air as well, and those Grail Guardians, I mean, that is disgusting value on behalf of Noctilus, who seems like his own ammunition might be bugged as well, so definitely fighting Vampire Coast very, very painful right now when all these things are kind of working in sync. But dogs do get through, get on those peasant bowmen here. Damsel trying to defend, but it's looking pretty rough for Bretonnia right now. I mean, army damage value-wise, he's managed to claw his way a little bit back, but full triple cap. He hasn't conceded yet, though, so evidently Stolten still thinks he has enough of a chance to win to continue on. Let's see what he's got. A big blob peasant bowman, a mounted yeoman, also just to block the depth guard. We've got some battle pilgrims coming out there as well. These mounted yeomen waking up over here, getting some spearmen as well. Lewin regenerating HP and just kind of hanging around until he can deploy and be used effectively. The Grail Relic is fighting here. I don't know. Technically, I think the Grail Relic has infantry capture weight. I'm not really sure, but right now it's almost starting to seize that objective ever so slightly. So we'll see. Unfortunately, here still, until those battle pilgrims arrive. No, actually, no battle pilgrims on this side, but just in general on all the objectives, until the battle pilgrims arrive, it'll be tough for Bretonnia to actually seize that objective. It might have benefited Sultan to have a couple more battle pilgrims, especially in his starting army. Maybe just combine a couple of those men-at-arms to be battle pilgrims, so you don't get so far behind on the capture in the initial phase. But let's see. Right now, deckhands are coming through. The one deckhand again is enough to counteract the Grail Guardian, the Grail Pilgrims, battle pilgrims. That's it. Grail pilgrims would be cool too. But anyway, soak up some cinematics as Lewin gets in here. He's going to fight some of these depth guard. Just try and grind them down. Own armor piercing damage. These Slayers of Bastogne also come out here to try and defend an objective. The Vampire Coast has a lot of missile units, but they are getting pretty tattered on the ground in terms of actual infantry. But let's see more Grail Guardians. Yeah, the Grail Guardians actually coming back from route here. Gonna deploy once again and try and just rack up a little bit more value. Charging out those foul deck guns. Deck guns have very low HP, so even as tattered as the Grail Guardians are, they're going to have no problems just absolutely obliterating the entire unit, and that will certainly redeem themselves in terms of damage value. Not all the way, but definitely better than they otherwise would have been, based on their initial performance there. So a little bit painful for Glorious Feeder here, just running into some direct counters for his elite cavalry here. In terms of just overwhelming gunfire, and both long range, short range, mid range, everything in between. We'll see. I mean, certainly they can perhaps go after this next unit of deck gunners, given the line of sight issues blocking them from being shot on the approach. This is another really ideal usage here, so I don't know. Maybe these Grail Guardians will eventually get their value back. I mean, if I think about it, they're 1,000 damage value now, plus the extra, what, 750 or whatever for the deck guns. I forget how much deck gunners actually are because I pretty much never use them. But there you go. So the Grail Guardians do end up barely paying for themselves, perhaps. Beast Slayers of Bastogne and Lewin also combined to take out the overexposed depth guard. So Bretonnia pushing and has managed to actually take a slight value lead despite everything. So a great comeback in progress from Sultan here. It's just a matter of can he actually take the objectives or not. He has got one objective down, so the bleeding has been stopped for now. He's got a little bit of time left, a little over 3 minutes, to try and make his moves, try and execute a triple cap here. Mounted Yeoman coming through. They're going to get blocked somewhat by the summoned zombies, but it looks like 5-10 models still get through and get on those zombie guns, just to interrupt them from firing. Very critical. More peasant mobs coming out. We've got some more, just a whole host of mobs coming out. Provide lots of capture weight. Looks like summoned zombies are also starting to disappear. Depth guard are just about gone there, so it's going to be dangerous. We'll see what Vampire Coast is able to do in response. Battle Pilgrims do finally come over to this objective as well to provide some actual capture weight. The mortar firing here is going to perhaps turn the tide a little bit. Certainly that explosive damage is great against low armor targets, but the bugged Noctilus ammunition, he's still firing, man. It's just so painful for Bretonnia. And the Beast Slayers of Bastogne continuing to fight as well. Knights of the Realm should just charge up and through here, try and interrupt those guns, because right now, Lewin doesn't have Lion Shield active. He's going to be taking a ton of gunfire. Now the Knights of the Realm activate to chase. We've got more mortars online over on the far side, so Vampire Coast continuing to pressure on all fronts. I don't think, there are some yeomen here that could move through, try and shut down those mortars, but instead they're moving perhaps to try and shut down these guns instead. I don't know, they might not have full visibility on the mortars perhaps, but Beast Slayers moving in, fight the gunnery right now. Knights of the Realm do finally charge this gun blob here, and one of them gets hit by Noctilus, but oh man, zombies also get hit by the Mounted Yeoman from the other side there, and the handguns should be sufficiently shut down at this point. Battle Pilgrims also with men-at-arms. Lewin coming over to crumble out this last zombie deckhand, and it looks like Bretonnia will actually be able to get the 3 cap. The question is, can they actually defend it now? Part of that is going to involve taking out Noctilus, finishing him off so he can't continue shooting. And mobs also moving in here to kind of saturate in with the cavalry, help take some hits for them. We've got Depth Guard reinforcing from the other side, though, so definitely both players kind of going all in at this point to try and win, obviously. But another capture for Bretonnia and closing in on the 3rd objective as well, so For the time being, they've staunched the bleeding. They're able to get back in control here, get some archers, some spearmen-at-arms, battle pilgrims, men-at-arms to help defend. It looks like actually no battle pilgrims, just all men-at-arms. Battle pilgrims came a little far forward and are fighting those deckhands, but the mortars here just relentlessly firing in. It's quite painful at this point. It should be noted that with Noctilus being out of magic, he can't cast any more spells, which means he can't refill the ammo of the mortars. The way the infinite ammo bug works is that when spells and effects which restore unit models also restore ammunition, which is obviously not intended, and certain effects in particular, like the lore attribute here, which is why I was checking for it, they will, once they hit the max ammunition, it will bug out to be infinite, right? So that being said, infinite ammo Noctilus is pretty much gone. A few more volleys of that bow fire should finish him off. Lewin trying to decide where he should land. I would definitely keep Lewin up on this high ground position, given that, you know, it's going to take Vampire Coast a long time to pressure over here. You'd have plenty of chance to respond. Also got plenty of strong forces here in the center to try and resist this. I mean, I say strong forces. It's mostly like mobs and stuff, but still enough numbers at least to resist for some time. On the other hand, on this side, the forces are pretty thin, and this mortar is exceptionally dangerous. Even without bugged unlimited ammunition, it's still going to be nasty for all of these light armor units, and although these archers do have some unit models, some ammunition left, they're not going to be able to actually finish off the mortar. Lewin instead swings into the center, which ultimately may prove to be a mistake, but yeah, Sultan here is going to have to defend all three objectives for a decent, you know, full-on 4 minutes, right? So it's quite a bit of time to have to defend, and considering how tattered things are over here, one depth guard gets summoned in, and suddenly it's like there's not much that can resist them. Lewin would have to dive over and start to fight in armor piercing, but look at the brutality of the mortar fire just landing on the corner of that formation there. The mortars firing up onto the hill here have just been savaging this Bretonnian position. Very, very effective. And with the depth guard now pushing them back, we've got dogs on the way as well. Very fast response from Valkanos to try and retake this objective. And all of a sudden, Bretonnia's got plenty of forces here in the center. Lewin, again, arguably overcommitting. I think the knights and the mobs could have probably dealt with the depth guard. And by forsaking this position, he's allowed this force of vampires to break them. Some peasants coming through with some bows here. They're likely just to get eaten up by the scurvy dogs without any supporting units. Lewin finally realizing his mistake, coming back over to try and defend, but not quickly enough. Vampire Coast are able to rapidly secure this objective with their superior capture weight. And Lewin, despite his fast response with the cavalry and everything else, it's going to be tricky for him to retake this objective. He's got to get all of these units on here and also keep them from routing, while simultaneously dealing enough damage to the Vampire Coast infantry here to reduce their capture weight. And he's only got about 30 seconds to do it, so it's an error that I see reasonably often on this map as to like what objective to defend at what time. And ultimately, it's easy for me to say these things in hindsight. In practice, in the heat of battle with the fog of war, it can be hard to know what the correct decision is, especially when you're having to make these decisions very quickly on the fly. So easy for me to criticize, but certainly a great game to both players. A valiant attempt at a comeback by Sultan, but ultimately going to prove unsuccessful. And also, I mean, I'm talking about the infinite ammunition bug, but I mean, obviously nothing to say about, I'm not trying to say anything bad about Valkanos' character for using said units. I mean, it is just the nature of things. If you play Vampire Coast as they were intended, you're going to run into that bug. Not a lot you can do about it, so it is what it is. But at the very least, I mean, Noctilus, it would be polite perhaps if you could, just after a certain portion of the battle, you know, not that you should count every shot, but just after a while, just maybe turn off fire at will and stop shooting with him if you want to be polite to your opponent. But anyway, Vampire Coast, Mortars got some huge numbers of kills, not that much value, but tactically, the kills and the leadership damage inflicted on the low-tier Bretonnian units is super important. And then obviously Noctilus carries a ton of value. Depth Guard, super strong in general, great in this matchup. Yeah, as long as they don't run into something like Dwellers Below. Handguns also do a decent job, of course. The armor-piercing missile is quite decent, and while I like the pick of the Royal Pegasus Knights, I think the usage there obviously would have been much more cost-effective to have regular Pegasus Knights, and I think just regular Pegasus Knights are generally easier to use, generally more cost-effective, especially in Domination. We can bring them off of Vanguard points for only 1100. It's a great fast response unit, in my opinion, and maybe would have been a better pick than the Royal style here, but yeah, those the Grail Guardians did end up paying for themselves at the end of the day, although again, arguably their job could have been done with just Knights of the Realm. And look at that, 4,000 damage value on Knights of the Realm. They are officially promoted. Skip questing Knight all the way up to Grail Knights, because that is insane on a couple of... That's enough to pay for 4 summons plus, guys. That's insane value right there. And it makes me think that maybe you should just spam Knights of the Realm in this matchup, and in many matchups, to be honest. Maybe you just go with more Knights of the Realm and use the leftover funds to buy some more Battle Pilgrims, perhaps? Hard to say. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, but definitely another fun one from Sultan. He sent me a grip of awesome Domination games, so expect more from him going forward. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.